Well, it's time for a story about loyalty. In the western part of Canada was a lake in the midst of a beautiful forest. Now, on the far side of the lake, a goose sat patiently on her nest. Now, under her were 7 large eggs. They were ready to hatch any day. But until then, they required a perfect balance of warmth and protection. And that's why the goose sat on her nest. Now, the father goose, called a gander, stood nearby to protect the mother and the eggs from any harm. Now, the two had been here several times before. Each year, they laid their eggs and they raised their young in precisely the same place. Now, for safety, the geese built their nest beside the lake so that they could swim away if they were ever attacked. However, now that the eggs were laid, well, leaving the nest was no longer an option. See, the goose and the gander were committed to defending their young against any danger, even if it cost their own lives. See, when they built the nest, the goose and gander searched the woods to make sure that there were no dangerous neighbors nearby. They looked for raccoons in the trees. They looked for snakes in the ground. Everything seemed to be fine. So they built the nest with some sticks and some leaves that they gathered up from the forest. Well, soon came the eggs, and now the geese took turns sitting on the eggs and guarding the nest. Now it was the mother's turn to sit on the nest, and so the gander, the father goose, took his post like a soldier. Well, before long, the sun began to set behind the trees in a beautiful display of colors in the sky. Now, it was just the light from the moon and the stars overhead. Well, during the night, with her dark bill, the mother gently rotated her eggs in the nest to keep them warm evenly. But then they heard something move. A large bush over in the distance shook as if something was in it. Well, the goose and the gander watched and they waited. 1 hour passed, 2 hours passed, 3 hours passed, and the two geese stayed wide awake, looking for any danger. See, any sacrifice of sleep was worth the safety of their eggs. But then a dark shadow appeared from behind the bush, and in a flash it ran straight for the nest. Well, the gander, that father goose, he jumped out in front and he spread his wings as big as he could and he honked like a trumpet blast. Honk, honk, honk. Well, then he lowered his head and he hissed like a cobra waiting to strike. That's what geese do when they are attacked. Well, the enemy was a fox, a hungry fox, hungry for a large goose egg. Well, the fox charged at the gander and tore several feathers from his tail. Well, in return, the gander swung its wing around like a club and knocked the fox down to the ground. Well, the gander stuck out his neck and delivered sharp bites to the fox, one on the head, one on the back, one on the side. Well, the two rolled back and forth in the dirt as that battle continued. And finally, the fox jumped up on the gander's back and bit the back of the gander's neck. Well, the mother goose saw this and charged at the attacker. She jabbed the fox with her bill. Wham, wham, wham! Well, the fox let go of the gander's neck and faced the mother, and the two stared at each other for just a few seconds. And then the fox turned and ran as fast as he could back to the forest. Well, the mother goose watched that fox run through the bushes and around the trees until it disappeared into the distance, until finally she knew that her family was safe. Well, the mother turned to her eggs, now cooling in the night air. But as she did, she saw her mate lying there on the ground. Well, she stood over the gander and called, but he didn't respond. She tapped him with her bill, but he didn't move. And there in the moonlight, the mother goose looked at the gander's neck, and on the back of it, she saw the fatal marks of the fox's teeth. The gander had defended his family to the very end and even gave up his life to protect them. Well, it was because of his sacrifice that the mother and their eggs were still alive. Well, the mother goose slowly returned to her nest, and when the sun rose the next morning, she started to feel her eggs move beneath her. She stood up and she waited to see the first egg crack from top to bottom, and then out came her first baby gosling. The other 6 eggs soon opened up, and the nest was full of small, yellow, down-covered birds. Well, that day, 7 young goslings followed their mother out of the nest and into the lake. Now they could be safe from dangers on land. Now they could grow up to have families of their own. Now they were alive and well, but it was thanks to their father's sacrifice, the loyalty of the goose and the gander. Now, whether a goose, a gander, or a person, life does not usually demand such great sacrifices in one day. But instead, loyalty is making small, daily sacrifices that demonstrate our love, concern, and commitment to others. That is the lesson of the goose. And I hope that you and I will remember to show loyalty.